Yesterday, we read the beginning of Out of the Dust by Karen Hesse, and we learned a little bit about Billy Joe and the community that she lives in, and the setting, and what it's like to live in the Dust Bowl. Today, we're going to continue reading, and we're going to learn more about her ma and her pa and what her family is like and what it's like living with them. So today, as you're reading, pay close attention to how her ma and her pa are described, and remember, use all the indirect characterizations, speech, their thoughts, their effects. How does Billy Joe react to them? Also, their actions, and finally, their looks. We're going to begin today reading on page 15, Birthday for FDR. I played so well on Wednesday night. Arlie put his arm across my shoulder and asked me to come and perform at the president's birthday ball. Ma can't say no to this one. It's for President Roosevelt. Not that Mr. Roosevelt will actually be there, but the money collected at the ball, along with the balls all over the country, will go into the president's name, to the Warm Springs Foundation, where Mr. Roosevelt stayed once when he was sick. Someday, I plan to play for President Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself. Maybe I'll go all the way to the White House in Washington, D.C. In the meantime, it's pretty nice. Arlie's asking me to play twice for Joyce City, January 1934. Not too much to ask. We haven't had a good crop in 3 years, not since the bounty of '31, and we're all whittled down to the bone these days, even Ma with her new round belly. But still, when the committee came asking, Ma donated 3 jars of applesauce and some cured pork, and a feed set nightie she had sewn for our coming baby. Mr. Hardley's money handling. It was Daddy's birthday, and Ma decided to bake him a cake. There wasn't enough money for anything like a real present. Ma sent me to fetch the extras with 50 cents she'd been hiding away. Don't go to Joyce City, Billy, she said. You can get what we need down at Hardley's store. I slipped the coins into my sweater pocket, the pocket without the hole, thinking about how many sheets of new music 50 cents would buy. Mr. Hardley glared when the Wonder Bread door opened, banged shut behind me. He squinted as I creaked across the wooden floor. Mr. Hardley was in the habit of charging too much for his stale food, and he made bad change when he thought he could get away with it. I squinted back at him as I gave him Ma's order. Mr. Hardley's been worse than normal. Since his attic filled with dust and collapsed under the weight, he hired folks for repairs and argued over every nail and every little minute. The whole place took shoveling for days before he could open again. Some stock was so bad it had to be thrown away. The stove clanked in the corner as Mr. Hardley filled Ma's order. I could smell apples, ground coffee, and peppermint. I sorted through the patterns on the feed bags, sneezed dust, blew my nose. When Mr. Hardley finished sacking my things, I paid the bill, and tucking the list in my pocket along with the change, and hurried home, so Ma could bake the cake before Daddy came in. But after Ma emptied the sack, setting each packet out on the oilcloth, she counted her change. And I remember with a sinking feeling that I hadn't kept an eye on Mr. Hardley's money handling. And Mr. Hardley had cheated again. Only this time he cheated himself, giving us 4 cents extra. So while Ma mixed a cake, I walked back to Mr. Hardley's store, back through the dust, back through the Wonder Bread door, and thinking about the second-handed music in a moldy box at the shop in Joyce Center. Music I could have for 2 cents a sheet. I placed Mr. Hardley's overpayment on the counter and turned to head back home. Mr. Hardley cleared his throat, and I wondered for a moment if he called me back to offer a piece of peppermint or pick me out an apple from the crate. But he didn't, and that's okay. Ma would have thrown a fit if I had taken a gift from him. February 1934. 50 miles south of home. In Amarillo, Wind blew plate glass windows in, tore electric signs down, ripped wheat straight out of the ground. Rules of dining. Ma has rules for setting the table. I place plates upside down, glasses bottom side up, napkins folded over forks, knives, and spoons. When dinner is ready, we sit down together, and Ma says, "Now." We shake out our napkins, spread them on our laps, and flip over our glasses and plates, exposing neat circles, round comments of what life would be without dust. Daddy says, "The potatoes are pepper plenty tonight, Polly." And, "Chocolate milk for dinner? Aren't we in clover?" When really all our pepper and chocolate is nothing but dust. I heard word from Livy Kinlan. The Kinlans can't find work. Can't get food. Livy's brother, Reuben, 15 last summer, took off thinking to make it on his own. I hope he's okay. With a baby growing inside Ma, it scares me thinking, where would we be without somewhere to live, without some work to do, without something to eat? At least we've got milk, even if we have to chew it. February 1934. Breaking drought. After 70 days of wind and sun, of wind and clouds, of wind and sand, after 70 days of wind and dust, a little rain came. February 1934. Dazzled. In the kitchen, she is my ma. In the barn, in the field, she is my daddy's wife. But in the parlor, Mom is something different. She isn't much to look at, so long and skinny, her teeth poor, her dark hair always needing a wash. But from the time I was 4, I remember being dazzled by her whenever she played the piano. Daddy bought it, an old creamer, his wedding gift to her. She came to this house and found gaps in the walls, a rusty bed, no running water, and that piano gleaming in the corner. Daddy gets soft eyes standing behind her while she plays. I want someone to look that way at me. On my 5th birthday, Ma sat me down beside her and started me to reading music, started me to playing. I'm not half so good as Ma. She can pull Daddy into the parlor even after the last milking. When he's so beat, he barely knows his own name, and all he wants is a mattress under his bones. You've got to be something to get his notice that time of day. But Ma can. I'm not half so good with my crazy playing as she is with her fine tunes and her fancy fingerwork. But I'm good enough for Arlie, I guess. March 1934. Debts. Daddy is thinking of taking a loan from Mr. Roosevelt and his men to get some new wheat planted. Where the winter crop has spindled out and died, Mr. Roosevelt promises Daddy won't have to pay a dime till the crop comes in. Daddy says, I can turn the fields over, start again. It's sure to rain soon. Wheat's sure to grow. Ma says, what if it doesn't? Daddy takes off his hat, roughs up his hair, puts the hat back on. Course it'll rain, he says. Ma says, Bae, it hasn't rained enough to grow wheat in 3 years. Daddy looks like a fight brewing. He takes his red face of his out to the barn to keep from feuding with my pregnant Ma. I ask Ma, how? After all this time, Daddy still believes in rain. Well, it rains enough, Ma says, now and again, to keep a person hoping. But even if it didn't, your daddy would have to believe. It's coming on spring, and he's a farmer. March 1934. Follows maggoty stew. Arlie Wonderdale said, the rehearsals for Sunny of the Sunny Side shouldn't take me out of school more than twice next week. When I told Ma, she got angry about my missing school to play piano for some show. Me and Daddy, we're trying our best to please Ma, for fear of what it might do to the baby if we don't. I don't know why she's so against my playing. She says that school is important, but I do all right in school. I know she doesn't like the kind of music I play, but sometimes I think she's just plain jealous when I'm at the piano and she's not. And maybe she's a little afraid of me going somewhere with the music she can't follow, or of the music taking me so far away one day. I'll never come home. Whatever the reason, she said I can't do it. Arlie had to get somebody to take my place. I do as she says. I go to school, and in the afternoons I come home, run through my chores, do my reading and my math, and work at the kitchen table, all while I glare at my mamma's back with a scowl, foul as maggoty stew. March 1934.